all the money and all the access and all the accolades in the world aren't going to make me feel better. So I know that the only way I can really do that is to get people not following me, but standing next to me. With multifamily investing or single family home investing, you're not going to make enough money month to month to use that money to buy another property over the short term. But with Airbnb, you can, right? Like, believe in yourself and bet on yourself more, because there's something unique about all of us.
I'm Coach Dez, mindset motivator and lifestyle entrepreneur. My mission is to help you crush your self-limiting beliefs and embrace being unapologetically you. The Born Unbreakable podcast brings you inspirational stories from all over the world that will empower you to unlock your unbreakable spirit. I'd love to partner with you on your next breakthrough. Go to bornunbreakable.com to schedule a free transformational call. Action begins today. Welcome to the Born Unbreakable podcast, the pre-Thanksgiving edition episode with Coach Dez and my guest, Ralph DiBugnara, aka D-Bug. So you got to check out the Instagram. That's my first call to action. I usually wait till the end of the episode to do a call to action, but I'm telling you, D-Bug, so D-I-B-U-G, follow him on Instagram. You'll be inspired all day long. I was like, wow, this is one of the best follows I've ever done. But I met Ralph at an event in Nashville last month called Rise and Record. A phenomenal event, by the way, put on by Brandon T. Adams and his beautiful wife. So you got to check that out. That's another conversation. But Ralph was actually one of the speakers at the event. And he happened to be in an industry that I have an obsession with, which is real estate. He is the president of Home Qualified, and his portfolio is insane. When I first heard an introduction of Ralph and I learned that he's closed in his career over $40 billion of loans, I was like, is that billions, like with a B? I had to double check and fact check that, because I was like, we're in the era of alternative facts. So you kind of got to double check your shit, So I was like, holy crap, that's amazing. So he does loans, he does Airbnbs, but on top of that, he's just a really amazing person with an incredible story. Besides the business that he's in, he's also an author, he's a speaker, he's a motivator. He's very compelling. And that's the absolute reason why I've asked him to come on the show, so I can have a conversation with him. So Ralph, thank you for being here on holiday pre-weekend of,
Well, thank you for having me. That was an amazing introduction, much better than I could ever say it myself. So I appreciate that.
So one thing, okay. So when I was sitting, well, first of all, let me tell you of the demeanor of Ralph. So my besides that, I saw him on a billboard and I knew he was an important person. I saw him walking around very busy. He was always on the phone. So I was like, he's probably closing a deal or something. Then I had the fortune, there was this VIP dinner, and I had the fortune of having Ralph at my table. And I was like, and he probably came from something important, because he came a little bit later and we were all catching up and stuff. And I was just so impressed that, busy as you are, you can be present to go to events like this and take your time out to speak. So, and then I noticed his accent and I was like, sounds like a New Yorker. Yeah. So, right? So Brooklyn is in the house, but actually you're in Jersey. You work
I'm in Jersey now. Yeah, I'm born in Brooklyn. I was in Manhattan up until about 5 or 6 years ago. And then I moved right over the bridge to New Jersey. I'm right on the water in New Jersey. But I needed more space. I had 2 kids, so I needed more space. So I moved over to New Jersey, but I'm still a New Yorker when people ask me.
I love it. But you're representing the East Coast. I love it. I love learning about the story of your family, your wife, and your kids. So I do want to start with that, Ralph, because before you became all the things that I just described, you were growing up in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And you were living your life over there, and it wasn't quite The same. So what was your upbringing like there? And then what led you to decide to get into this whole industry of loans and real estate?
Yeah. So I grew up in an Italian Brooklyn neighborhood, very much like you see in movies, whether it's they show in Brooklyn or other cities. But I grew up in a very Italian Brooklyn neighborhood. My father was a teacher. He worked like 3 jobs so we could live in the places we lived, and we lived in a 2-family home. So it was very small. I shared a bedroom with my brother. We were like this far apart from each other in the bedroom, and but I loved where I live. I loved the neighborhood I grew up in. I loved kind of everything about it, and kind of grew up around New York my whole entire life, around New York City. But, I got to places in my life where I just wasn't, I lost confidence like over and over again, throughout my adolescence and, kind of even into adulthood. And in doing that, like it caused me to, fail at a lot of things, including school. I just wasn't somebody who could sit still and concentrate in school. And instead of kind of leaning into it and saying, hey, I got to figure this out. And I just kind of quit. Like I just was like, well, I'll just skate through. And I did. And I skated through all the way through college. And you can kind of just go through the motions and get through it. And that's what I did. I went to a city university. I never left the nest. I didn't want to leave my neighborhood. I didn't want to leave my parents. I was very, very comfortable, and I just didn't want to be uncomfortable. So, through high school and college, I kind of gravitated towards what I was going to be. But kind of failing in school made me feel like an outcast, because I wasn't part of the crowd that was excelling, within the walls that I was in every single day. So I feel like an outcast. I started to act like an outcast. And in doing that, I just got involved with the wrong people doing the wrong things, which led to some problems in life and some skewed views on what the world should be and that kind of stuff. But even that, at some point, I was smart enough to see that that's not where I wanted my life to go long term. So I graduated college. It was around 2001, 2002. It was the .com bubble. So it was a recession. We went through a recession, not like we are now, but not that far off. And there was really no jobs. There was only sales jobs. So I took a job working for Canon. I was selling copiers door to door in Manhattan, which was awful. Awful. It's not having doors slammed in your face is not fun. So I took a job doing that. And after a short period of time with that, I was like, this isn't for me. I got to do something else. And I had a friend that was in the mortgage business, which at the time was just kind of starting to kind of grow again. And he was at a company and said, hey, I'm in a company that's on Wall Street. They're growing. They're looking to go public. I can get you into the training program. And in a couple of months, you can be on the phone. I was like, I'm not really a salesperson. I'm doing sales now, but I'm failing. What does this job pay? And he's like, it doesn't pay anything. It's commission only, but, it gives you an opportunity. And I really didn't have any other options. So it was either do that or kind of go back to what I was doing on the street, which I didn't want to do anymore, as a long-term thing. So I had a little bit of money saved up that could last me for a couple of months. And I just kind of dove in to mortgages and real estate. I bought my first property at 23. I excelled in mortgages as it kind of grew until about 2007, 2008. And I really lost everything within a very short period of time. I lost my job. I lost my income. I lost my savings. I lost properties that I owned. And I kind of started over again in about 2008 with a lot of debt and not a lot of prospects. And I built it from 2008 until now. And there's a lot of stuff that happened in between. But from zero again and we did about $2 billion last year in mortgage business. And we're going to do somewhere between 1.6 and 1.7 this year. It's down a little bit, but we grew it into something huge again between me and my partner. And it's just, I'm happy that that's where it's happened, but it's been like this. It has not been like this. So that's a short version.
A lot of peaks and valleys.
Yes.
Right. And I think a lot of people can relate that growing up, sometimes you're lost in the sauce a little bit until you're presented with an opportunity. And when you don't have many options, you have to make a decision about what direction you're going to go. When it was 2007, 2008, and things were just going to not very good for you, what made you want to keep going? Because I think a lot of people, they were like, I'm out. This is just way too much. And I'm not.
The honest answer is, at that point, I didn't really feel like that I could excel at anything else. Because I'd only really been successful at this point in my life at this. And I had tried some other things in the meantime. So I was, one, I thought that I had no choice but to stay. And two, I was too prideful to let everybody know that I had failed, because I felt like I was seen as a failure up until the point where I started excelling in this business. And people like, I was somebody to forget about. It was just like, whatever, Ralph's Ralph. You know what I mean? It's no big deal. And then I had become this person who was more successful than the majority of the people that I had grown up with. And I just didn't want to admit that I had failed so badly. I mean, I really failed. I didn't want to admit to my parents and to my brother and to my immediate family that I failed. So I just pretended to them like everything was okay. And I woke up every single day in some darkness, and I just dug in. And because I didn't give myself a choice, it ended up working out. But it was by no means a planned strategic act. It was, I got no choice. So I guess I'm going to get up and do this. So I learned a lot of lessons from it, but that was really the reality of it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can totally understand that. It's like you're answering, first of all, to yourself and just your own abilities of saying like, okay, I have to persevere. But then you've got people that, you want to be proud of the things that you're doing in the world. And I think we all can have, we all have that feeling of wanting to be the best that we can, especially for the people that are around us, that love us and want to see us succeed.
I agree with you 100%. Yeah. And you don't want people, and in my situation, it was someone not wanting people to worry about me, some not wanting to feel like a failure, some not wanting to feel like that person that was back in college that people didn't really think very much of. Along those lines. So I think in life in general, unfortunately, some people are always going to see you as the person they met you as, right? They don't see growth, and they're not going to see growth because they want to keep you in a box because it makes them feel more comfortable. And it took me a long time to realize that in general, like, hey, just because somebody perceives me a certain way doesn't mean that's who I really am. And I know who I really am, and I have to be that person. So, some of it's just insecurities and pride and everything else, but you have to get over on your own.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an inward journey. To get past your own blocks, your own ego. I think that's probably one of the biggest things that get in people's way. Definitely. Is just that ego that's talking in your head all the time. I'm really curious what the catalyst was for you deciding to write a book.
So that's a good question, actually. Sometimes I don't remember. During the beginning of the pandemic, I'm in New York, the area, so it was really shut down completely. And I had to close down all of our offices. So we sent, everybody home, and I was coming to the office still every single day. I was in this office, actually, sitting here by myself. And before we sent everybody home, I said to everybody, listen, I don't know what's going to happen. At the beginning part of the pandemic, real estate and mortgage was really, really bad because you couldn't show homes, you couldn't sell homes, and the financing was drying up because nobody knew what to do. Because people had lost their jobs, they didn't know how to pay their mortgage, all the stuff, right? So for the first couple of months, it was really, really dark. But what I said to everybody before they sent them home, based off of my, past experiences, is like, look, I don't know what we're going to do every single day at this point, but whatever we're going to do, we're going to get up and work, and we just got to keep moving forward. I don't know what that means, but we just have to do something. Let's just do something every single day, whatever that is, right, to progress. And hopefully we'll be able to figure it out. So I'm sitting here by myself with a lot of free time on my hands, and I start just doing something every single day. And that something included starting a podcast, writing a script for a TV show, which is going to be on DirecTV this year. And then started to write this book about, it was really based on an experience I had during pandemic. And then when George Floyd happened, New York City was like all these riots. They were looting, they were riots. There was all these protests going on. And it was just like, I felt like everything exploded, right? Everybody was stuck inside and then they were outside and everything was, I'm not a person who watches the news. I just don't like to fill my head with that kind of stuff. But I was getting up every single day and turning on the news to see what was happening. And like, it was horrible. Like, it was like they were looting, there was rioting. And what happened with him was terrible. But I didn't think that my best use of my time was to protest, right? Like, I just didn't think that I was really benefiting anybody by marching every single day. So, and I remember one day, I got up and I turned on the news and I was looking, and the Bronx had been looted the night before, and like there was glass all over in the news, and I was like, you know what? I got to feel better today. I went downstairs, I grabbed garbage bags, I grabbed the shovel, I grabbed the broom, and I got in my car and I drove to the Bronx, and I drove up the blocks that I knew had been looted. And I got out of the car and I just found one store that had particularly been kind of destroyed, and I just started cleaning up, right? And then there were people in the shop, and then people around me started helping, and we all just started sweeping, cleaning this person's store up. And I did that for a couple of hours, and put my broom back in my trunk, got back in the car, and I went to drive home. And I think I was expecting to feel better, and I didn't. I didn't feel at all better. I felt like I don't feel like I'm making a difference. I don't feel like doing anything. And my kids are my wife is Dominican, and my kids are biracial, right? So, and I'm always a person who's had a very eclectic amount of people around me, like from all races and walks of life. So I'm just more because I'm just so curious all the time that I want to get to know people of different things. But it's always been who I am. But I come from, even being from New York. New York is a very ethnically diverse place, but it's very segregated, and people wouldn't think that. It's very neighborhoody, right? And it's a lot of immigrants originally in these neighborhoods. So immigrants do how immigrants do, right? They try to put down the people who came after them because they just don't want to be the bottom person anymore. So what I saw over my life was a lot of it's a lot of blatant racism, right? So a couple of things that the George Floyd made me think is, one, what can I do to actually create change that actually benefits people? And two, I don't want my children to be judged by either the color of their skin, because they really look pretty white like me, and or the fact that they are a minority. I don't want them to be judged either way. I don't want them to be given privileges for either thing, or want them to be looked at in a negative way for either thing. But if I'm not doing anything to affect change, then what am I really doing? So that was really my motivation to start a scholarship fund. I'm getting back to the book, right? So the scholarship fund was, I didn't know what I was doing with it, but I ended up hiring 6 people that I put out a blog post that turned into an Instagram post. It was like, look, I'm going to hire 6 people. I'm going to pay them a salary for 3 months to get licensed in my business as a licensed professional in my business. And as here's the link to go apply. I don't really have a plan. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know I want to do this. So I put the link out there. We got a ton of applications. I ended up picking 4 people, and they came in and they started, and I was really flying by the seat of my pants. And it was right when people could come outside again, essentially. And we started training them, and they all pretty much got licensed, I think, except one person. They all got jobs with me at some point. And that was like, wow, I really this means something to me. And that kind of is what started me to examine the growth trap, which I viewed as that I go through these growth traps all the time. And a growth trap is basically we're born, we grow automatically, right? We get bigger, we get stronger, we get smarter without doing anything, basically into our adolescence. And at some point, we have to force growth. And some people just don't do it. They stop. So the thought in front of them, I was like, wow, that really resonates with me. Let me start telling people what my story is. And that's how I started writing the book. So it's a long story, but that's how I started writing the book.
No, but I think that's the beauty of it, is because it comes from such a purposeful place. And I think if you're going to put something out there and you're going to affect change, it has to have intention and it has to have purpose. And that's exactly what, you're talking about, is being able to, you talk about your kids, you talk about your wife, you talk about the experiences you've had, you're trying to create something different. And that's something so hard, because today there's incredible amounts of divisiveness, even in the places where you think there would be a higher elevation, because it is a diverse place. We can, have these conversations that emanate respect despite having different opinions, but that's not the way that things are projected to us. And people get very caught up in the glorification of what's on the news, what gets promoted in social media. And it's this highlight reel of all mostly like 90% negative stuff. Like I barely can remember anything positive. That's why I too don't watch the news. I'm more of reading kind of things that can capture me from the most unbiased way, which is very difficult to find these days. But then I think, for anyone who's listening, one of the best places to go when you feel helpless or you feel hopeless, like when you got in your car and you thought that which is such a kind act to do, right? It's like you want to go and you want to do something, but the best place that you can go to affect change is to go within, because it's within here that nobody else has that story. Nobody else has that experience. So you can manifest that into something even greater than you probably can imagine.
Yeah, and that was really it. Like I felt like I had built myself up over 20 years, and I had all this access to these good people around me and these good resources, right? But what am I doing if I'm not sharing them? So like we really went and looked for people who didn't have access. I wanted younger individuals, 23 or under, that didn't have access and didn't know if they could get access. And I put them in my office. Like I put them in front of me in my office, and they sat here every single day. And it's like, you guys didn't get access like you're me. But then what do you do with it, right? So that was really the goal of it. And I'm working on trying to still expand that to this day. We have 1 or 2 people right now, but I really want to create it into more of an academy eventually, which is what we're currently working on. But that's the thing. Like it's great to have access, and it's great to have all this nice stuff, right? But what if money's not going to make you happy? Money makes life easier, in my opinion, right? And money gives you access to things that you probably wouldn't have access to. It makes life easier, but it doesn't make you happy, which is why I think that when you see people live in excess, they live in excess because they're always chasing that high of when they get something new or they buy something, right? But it doesn't make you happy. Like there's got to be some kind of purpose to what you're doing every single day. And, all the money and all the access and all the accolades in the world aren't going to make me feel better. So I know that the only way I can really do that is to get people not following me, but standing next to me. Right? Like, how do I create more leaders, right? Like if I can create more people standing next to me on stage, in front of the room, wherever, right? Then that is impacting and affecting change. And that's what I really want to do.
Yeah. And one of the things I admire so much about you is that you're a millennial advocate. You advocate for young people. What's the motivation behind why you want to encourage those young, hungry, folks, but maybe need a little bit more direction because they don't have as much experience yet?
Yeah, I think that it's the same thing as when I talk about racism, right? I think there's ageism in a lot of ways, both ways. But I think that people try to discount what younger people have to say, or discount how they're doing things because they either don't understand it or they don't necessarily, believe what they say, or it's their own insecurities. Like, oh, whatever, it doesn't make any sense because they're trying to like not accept something that they may be afraid of. So it's the same thing with them. Like I was once that person who didn't think I needed help and didn't think I needed mentorship and didn't think I needed to learn from other mistakes. And because I went that path, I learned the hard way. Like I really learned the hard way with everything. So I'm trying to communicate to people who are younger than me that like, hey, you don't have to learn the hard way. Come here. I'll talk to you about why this is the way I did it and how you do it this way. And on top of that, I still make mistakes every single day. Do you want to see them? Great, because it's not going to cost you a dime. Just come see what I'm doing every single day that I'm screwing up, and maybe you won't do the same thing.
Yeah. Well, and I think that transparency is so important, because none of us are flying on high and reach this omnipotent point where you never need to ask for help. You know all things. You're at the top of the mountain. And plus, it's really lonely if you were standing there by yourself. Anyways, that would be a really crappy life.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. You're right. Who wants to be alone there? So I agree with you.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you, because this is an interesting time in real estate.
Sure.
The big things that the headliners, right? The interest rate is going up. Like, oh, there's a lot of fear. That's one observation I've made. So in the past 2 years, I've bought and sold homes last year and this year in an up and down market. So awesome when you're like, oh, I could get over asking, and this is fantastic, multiple offers, all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, boom, you're in a different scenario. And it's like, oh, okay, now you're making compromises as a seller, you're dropping your price, you're doing all this stuff. The reality is that things are always going to be changing. Doesn't matter who's president. It doesn't matter, what's going on. The market is the market. It's going to change. What would you tell people who have that fear right now, that are going, oh my God, the interest rate, I just don't know. Who knows when it's going to change? Should I buy? Should I sell? What do you tell those people?
I think real estate, which I've proved through some hardships, as a long-term investment is still the best investment. If you look at real estate compared to the stock market, it's like twice the amount of return on investment since 1981. So I think, as a long-term investment, it's good. Now, in that long term, in the short term, there's going to be some of this, right? So I think two things. If I wanted to buy today, which I still am, I'm in contract on another property right now, right? I think you have to look, does this property at today's interest rates meet my budget or my income expectation if it's an investment property, right? Does it meet what I can afford to pay every single month or my income, my potential investment income from it, right? Does it meet those requirements? If it does, then great, then it's a good time to buy. But in the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to see some of this, right? You're going to see some of the ups and downs of it. But I can tell you, and this is a good example, I had properties in Florida pre-crash, 2008 crash. Those properties at some point were worth like 30, 40 cents on the dollar after the crash. I bought them for $220. They were worth like 70 or 60, like destroyed. I still own one of them today. It was worth $70,000. It's now worth $280,000 again. It's a income producing asset for me. Over the long term, I will win on that property. So that's one example. And I don't want anybody to take any kind of harp shits, but I think real estate is still a great investment over the long term. So like anything else, it's all relative. If you can buy a house at what it's really worth today and not overpay, but what it's really truly worth today in market value, and it meets your budget, then it's still a good investment long term.
Yeah. I think it's a difficult thing because it's emotional. I think that's one of the reasons why the process of real estate, especially if it's the first time anybody's doing anything, is challenging, because it's usually one of the biggest investments that people make. And there's an emotional energy behind it. So sometimes pulling the trigger is like, I don't know about this. I don't know. And so it's nice to hear, from someone who has been through and personally gone through the dips and the successes, that it is the long game when it comes to doing something like investing. Yeah. So what, I'm a little eager beaver around this, because I personally, as an investor, had started with short-term rental. Because it was just kind of like the buy and hold. It kind of seems safe. You find the right tenant, you have them pay, it's consistent, you make some profit. And then there's just this era of the short-term rental. There's videos on it. You can YouTube it. There's podcasts on it. People are making all this bank. It's so exciting. I know you've got a number of Airbnbs. Why is that? And I've talked to some other investors and people who do like capital funding. Why is that an exciting opportunity right now?
So, for the right properties that you buy in the right areas, and I really try to focus on vacation areas when it comes to this stuff, it's a higher rate of return on money for your investment capital. I can tell you that I'm making between 2 and 2.5 times as much as I do on my long-term rentals or my yearly lease rental properties. On my short-term rentals, I'm making 2 to 3 times as much on those properties. But they're getting, as they get more popular and it becomes more of an income stream, more regulation comes in, more taxes come in, more competition comes in, and you have to be conscious of it. So it's not as easy as, hey, this is better. I do like it better, but I do believe that, you still have to be strategic about where you're buying and how you're buying. And I'll give you an example. Today, actually, it's good timing. I have a property on the Jersey Shore. It's a beachfront property that's been one of my best properties to date that I bought for short-term rentals. It's gotten very busy over the last few years down there, and the local residents are not happy about it. So, with that comes cries to local government to change the laws, which there was no real laws there for short-term rentals except that they allowed it. So now what that culminated in was today they just passed something that's going to start at the beginning of the year, whereas your rentals have to be 7 days minimum. So you can't do a 1-day rental, a 2-day rental, 3-day. You have to rent for 7 days at a time, or you can't rent at all. Or you have to take leases over 90 days. So listen, that is a complete shift of strategy, because sometimes you get 7-day rentals, but it's hard. So I'm either going to have to lower my prices so it's more affordable for people, and or have less bookings. Like, so it's, that's a really prime example of stuff shifting. So one of my cardinal rules, which in this particular situation, I did follow, but it didn't end up making a difference, was that I want to buy in places that have short-term rental guidelines in place already. So that, because when they have nothing, there's something coming usually, right? So in this place, they kind of had nothing except that it was legal. And now, they've made some strict guidelines around it. So it just makes it more difficult. You know what I mean? Like, and some places, whereas the reason I like buying short-term rentals is because the data for short-term rentals, Airbnb and VRBO report exactly how much you're renting your property for, right? So it's public information. So I love that I can go look at an investment strategy. And I don't got to guess. I can look at, okay, this house did $100,000 in gross revenue this year. If I buy a house down the block, I should be able to replicate like their success, right? But with that, local governments come in and said, hey, we're going to start taxing this income, and you have to report and be taxed on it. So I've had a couple places where I have properties, two properties in Florida in particular, where now I have to pay a 3% tax on my rental, which wasn't in place before. So, there's good and bad about it, but I will tell you overall, it depends what your ultimate goal is. Yeah. I like the idea of creating homes that I can create experiences out of, that they could be specialty homes, that I can give people a good customer experience and make them into recurring customers, right? I like not having to worry about rental laws and terminating somebody's lease and getting them out of the house and that stuff. Like, that could, depending, New York and New Jersey, where I own a lot of my large scale multifamily, that's a big problem. Evicting people is not easy. So I like not having to deal with that, but I still think you should diversify. I don't think it should be all short-term rental, but I think that's what, I think there is definitely more income on those properties. And with those properties, I've been able to buy more properties with my profits just from the rentals, right? Yeah. With multifamily investing or single-family home investing, you're not going to make enough money month to month to use that money to buy another property over the short term. But with Airbnb, you can.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's why I had to do, see for myself and do that diversification. But you're right; it is a completely different strategy. It's different risk. You have to do a lot of research. I spend so much time on AirDNA, just looking at numbers and seeing where things are at and what seasonal shifts. Because I'm in the Las Vegas market. I told you before. It's very interesting. It's a travel extravaganza.
Yes.
Every kind of conference and every kind of person celebrating something is coming to my town for some reason. So
there's always business around, right? Like there's always something going on. So yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's been amazing. Like the kind of requests we get, it's like every single one is totally different because we do short-term rentals, but also events. So that's the other side of it is, specific special events that people want. And it's like, by the time they figure out how to do all that on the Las Vegas Strip, it's like, oh gosh, no thanks.
Yeah, let's go.
Depends the profile, depends the budget, all these different things. But no, I appreciate that. I appreciate you just talking about the honest, different things. So I am very curious, and you've noted it a few times in our conversation, is what's next for you? Because it sounds like there's a few things that are cooking up and culminating.
It's a really good question. I had a conversation with somebody about this earlier, who's a pretty big, he's got a pretty big real estate portfolio. I don't know completely, if I'm being completely honest, right? What I think is next for financing for these homes is that I believe in the first 2 quarters of 2023, you're going to see interest rates come back down again. Not into the 2s and the 3s, but I think into the 4s and the 5s, because I think the government has a plan to raise rates until the end of the year. There is no plan after that. I think what's going to happen between March and April is you're going to see them reduce rates, and that will create a lower interest rate and more buying power for people again. So I do think that that's coming, and there will be a little bit of a boom that comes with that again. I don't know what strategy is going to be. Like, if you would have talked to me a year and a half ago, I would have said, I love short-term rentals, buy short-term rentals. Like, I would have given you something clear. Like, this is what I'm focused on for the next 6 months. I think it's very, very hard to tell. But I want to just mention two things that I've seen over the last few days that tell me that at least buying investment property, you're still on the right track. And it's what I truly believe. JP Morgan came out yesterday and said they're looking for about $1 billion in single family homes that they could add to their portfolio and rent. They're looking for a rental portfolio. A couple of large investors are now buying distressed single family rentals already. So what I think what they're seeing is that one, that rent always goes up. Rent does not stop increasing. Rent's always going up. I think they're realizing that people are moving from state to state constantly. People like to live as nomads at this point, and rentals really fit that lifestyle better. So I do believe that buying investment properties to rent to people, whether it's short term or long term, is still a good strategy, which is why I'm still on it. I like the short term rental idea in that space because I think the way people's habits have changed. And go to any of your local airports right now. You're in Vegas, you definitely see this. With all the inflation and recession and high interest rates and all that stuff, travel is busier than it's ever been. And I think it's twofold, right? I think that people are cooped up for a little while, so they're getting their licks in. And secondly, I believe that people just live differently, right? They live differently. I'm going to go work from here for a month. I'm going to go here for a couple of weeks. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. So I think a lot of that's been caused by people's change of habits. So that just leaves more room for growth in real estate that way.
Yeah. No, I agree. I meet people all the time that have the most fascinating stories about their travel and work experience. Like a number of people who have bought RVs and have just driven to different states to live and work simultaneously. And then some people, because of the nature of what it is that they do, which is actually quite a few industries, they spend time in different countries even. Like I'll work a few months here, I'll go to Europe, go to different parts of the US, and you just can.
You can move around, yeah.
In a digital solution.
Yes, yeah. The one thing that this pandemic did was speed up our adaptation to technology and how we're going to live. So I think that what's happened over 2 years probably would have taken 10, but it's changed our lifestyles. And I believe in a good way overall. So I think that the real estate plays into that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you talked about a podcast. You've written a book. You made a little mention of this thing on DirecTV. What is that all about? What's going on with that?
So during COVID, we started. I started doing a lot of lives because I wanted to talk to people in real estate about what was. First, it started with just me. I wanted to talk to people in real estate what was what I knew from the past, what was happening in the present, what I thought would happen in the future. And then I started getting bored of just hearing myself speak. So I started inviting some other people on to do the same. And I started looking for people who were successful in business or my industry, who had been through some hardships and had a good story to tell, to explain to people what they thought was going to happen in the present and the future. And then from that, we decided to turn into a television show called the Disruptors Network. And the Disruptors Network was about entrepreneurs who had built a business on their own, through some hardships. And from that business, now successful business, they were now showing other people how to do it themselves. So we did the first season. We put it on the streaming networks. It was on Roku and Apple TV and YouTube TV and Amazon Prime. And it was on all the streaming platforms. We got it on the streaming platforms. And from that, it got picked up for the second season by a network by the name of Bespoke, who has its own network on DirecTV. They also are on all the streaming platforms, and it's going to be on some local networks. So season 2, which we filmed already, which is in editing, is going to be out early next year.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I try not to think about things, but it's cool.
It kind of streams everywhere. The second, it's no big deal. It's I love it. It's just like, and you keep expanding. But I think what's so cool is the reach, your ability to reach more people and inspire, because, as you and I were exchanging stories, I do think that, one of the things that as I've matured two different ages in life. It's like when and this hit me when you talked about happiness earlier, when you're like, getting more things or having money isn't going to make you happy. It's going to give you access.
Correct.
So that's like, okay, yeah, that's like ding, ding, ding. That makes so much sense. So when I've gone through this journey, which I do believe we're all on, which is about fulfillment, I feel like we're on a quest to answer the question of what is fulfillment. What does that look like? It's usually not associated with like a dollar amount. It's access to things to get us to do stuff that we want to do to impact the world. But I do find that fulfillment for me comes from the ability to reach and inspire more people. And so you've talked about some of those different avenues, and I think that's just one more avenue, which is really cool.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's education for me too, right? Same thing as you. Like, I just want to educate people on what I've seen, what I think works and doesn't work, and what I think is going to work in the future. And I think that's where I get the biggest boost from is that portion of it, right? And I think along with that though, I've become hypersensitive about how I spend my time, because I have kids that are growing very, very fast. They're 7 and 9 now, and then every single day they seem like they grow 2 years. So, I want to be very, very conscious about being present. And you mentioned being present right at the dinner, and that's something I've really had to work on. So I really appreciate you saying that, because a lot of what you usually used to see in me was the busy. You saw the busy, and I just would never be present anywhere. Like, I'd always be on the phone and always be moving around, and I feel like I was just missing out on real conversations and real interactions with people, and the things that you really need for your life and in past, I would either not show up at that dinner at all, or I would have just been on my phone the whole entire time, just kind of half in the conversation, half out. But because I didn't do that, I had some great conversations. I met some great people like you, and it bears fruit for you. So I think just being conscious about how you're spending your time, and are you valuing your time, and in turn, are the people you're talking to valuing your time? That's become really, really important to me.
Yeah. And well, you mentioned time, and you mentioned your children. I have nieces, and they're 13 and 15. Lord help us.
Tough age, yeah.
It's interesting because I look at the generations that are coming next, right? We talked about the millennials that you help, and then there's the ones that are even next after. I don't even know the names of the next ones after that, right? Like the ages of your kids, but it is a different time, that we're moving through, a time and space of digital, and most of it is positive. Honestly, I do believe but I also think it's a little overwhelming. So I'm just curious, as a dad, what are the kinds of challenging things that you talk to your kids with? I know they're 7 and 9, but honestly, 7 and 9 today was probably a lot different than me and you at 7 and 9.
They have so much more information than we had. So it's just you're dealing with different, it's totally different than my upbringing. I was talking to a really good friend of mine today who I haven't seen. He's one of my best friends. He lives on the West Coast, so I don't see him that much, but he was back today. He was like my younger brother before I had kids. I met him when I was about 25 and he was about 18. And he's grown to be very, very successful in the music business. His music name is Sycamore. He's a producer, and he was Travis Scott's A&R for all his albums. He manages a bunch, but he's become a huge success. And what we kind of talked about today is that, like, he was the younger generation to me at some point, but he's not anymore, right? And I started getting into what my kids are like, and just like I kind of did with him when I think I was mentoring him when we were younger, is that I just talk to them as adults. I'm very straight up with them. I explain why to them, why we're doing things, why we're trying things. I'm constantly thinking about what they're thinking about and how I can connect with them more. It's become a challenge for me. And because that's the case, I really love having them around me, because I'm constantly like learning, and but I just try to be as real as I possibly can with them. I don't try to hide stuff from them. I don't oversaturate them with things I don't think they need to know. But at the same time, like, I answer questions, I take them everywhere with me, and I just try to expose them to different people, different things. And over the summer, me and my son, who's 9 now, so he's old enough to kind of get on the bike with me and ride through the city of Manhattan. And He's gotten really into basketball the last couple of years, so I took him to ride around to all the famous basketball courts in New York City, and the Rucker and Dykeman and West Fourth courts, and for the most part, they're neighborhoods that are good and bad, right? Like they're real, true New York City neighborhoods that have their good parts and their bad parts. I, growing up the way I did, know how to move around those blocks, those streets, and those neighborhoods where he's not going to be any danger. I know where I can go. I know where I can't go. I know who I can talk to. I know who I can't talk to. He doesn't have that. He had me. But, so when I think about it, I'm like, I'm concerned that they're not going to have the street smarts that I had. But they're going to have smarts that I didn't have at all. So there's always challenges in life, right? They're going to be a lot more educated. They're going to be a lot more well-read. They're going to have a lot more knowledge. Things are going to come easier to them that way. And some of the things that I was good at by force, they're not going to have as much of a use for it. But if they do, they're going to have to learn them in a different manner. So I just try to keep an open mind to it. I try to be patient. It takes a lot of patience, but I try to talk to them as if they're adults. So I don't baby talk them. I don't down talk them. I don't try to shield them from everything. I just try to talk to them like they're adults.
I love your outlook, and I love that honesty and that transparency, because it's unfortunately, I think if you don't have that, they're going to have so much of it when they're not with you, because they're going to get everywhere else between friends and TV and social media, and everywhere they turn, there's going to be something. So might as well be getting your take.
Yeah, and you know what? My parents, my mother and father, they're Italian, and the Italian way, and I think it's part of most immigrant cultures, was that we tell them need to know. Kids are on a need to know basis, right? And to this day, I'm still on a need to know basis on things that I shouldn't be. But my father was somebody who let me learn on my own. He didn't try to control what I was doing. He didn't try to tell me what to do. And I think at some point I probably needed that, and I didn't have it. But at the same time, he did me a huge favor, because long term he was right. That was the way it was supposed to be. But I did some stupid things along the way. Like I followed the wrong people, and I got involved in the wrong things. But they were good learning lessons for me. And I think if you try to shield them from everything and don't let them make mistakes and try to control everything they do, that you're just setting up for failure at some point in life. Whether it's now or later, it's gonna turn out to failure. So that's just how I learned. I learned after I had them and I reflected back on my childhood. That's what I realized about it. I was like, oh wow, he really just let me go through it. But it worked. It ended up working out. So I took a lot of value in that.
Yeah, no, I do. I think there's so much value to that, and you learn that resiliency. You learn how to get back up after you fall down, and that's where I think the most learning comes from. So I want to ask you a couple questions, just to kind of get your essence a little bit more. And my first one is, because my show is called Born Unbreakable, is what makes you unbreakable?
So if I had one unbreakable quality, I believe it's consistency. I'm consistency to nauseam, and I apologize for all the changing light. I'm actually on the water, and it's because the sun's coming down, so it keeps changing the shadows around me. So if you see that, that's what's happening.
I love it.
I'll show you as much as I can. I don't know if you can see it. You can't see the light, but that's the beauty. So it's the sun's coming down. So it's just it's that time of day here. But I think that consistency. When I'm not good at something, when I'm not feeling well, when I'm not into it, when I don't, whatever, right? It doesn't matter. I'm consistent. I'm very consistent every single day. I exercise every single day, not because I'm some freak of nature who loves pain and stress, but it's because I need the consistency of it. I just need the consistency of it. It makes me mentally much more clear. So I am just very, very consistent. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I'm not the most dynamic guy in the room. I'm not anything, right? But I'm very, very, I will out-consistent most people. So I think it makes me unbreakable. It's that.
I love it. And you are an inspiration. And like I said, I'm telling you all, if you follow him, he will make you get more consistent. Whether it's related to business or taking care of yourself personally, because it's a struggle, right? Like it is a hard thing. Sometimes people wake up, it's a foggy morning, you have a headache, you're a little tired, you're not trying to do the things. But I think it is when you become a person that can do the things in spite of those adversities that you can make it. It's a symbolism, really, right? Of how you come up with anything.
I try to think. I always try to think of the end result when I want to do something and or I don't want to do something. And what beating that is that I know if I don't get out of bed and exercise, maybe I'll be a little bit more rested. But I guarantee you, by 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, why didn't I just go? Like, what was the purpose? So, like, I always think of that, right? That's and whenever I don't want to do something or I don't want to go someplace, it's like, is this going to benefit me in my life? Yes. All right, and just
go through your mental checklist of important questions and then just like power through.
Do it. Yeah. So I try to think of the end result rather than how I feel in that moment, because we can definitely be emotional in the moment.
Yeah. Tell me about it. What's a self-limiting belief that you've had to overcome?
I think like most people, and this is general, but I'm trying not to be general, is that I'm not good enough and I don't belong. That I don't belong where I am. And the further and further I've advanced in my career and in life, the bigger, better rooms I've gotten in, I've always realized that I can go anywhere. And it's not because I'm super special, it's just because there is nothing holding us back from working with anybody or working on anything or succeeding in place except it's always ourselves. It's so always ourselves. It's so frustrating to me when I stand in front of somebody who has a great idea or a great concept or a great outlook on something, and I'm talking to them and I know they're not going to do it. Like we could talk about it for 2 hours and I know they're not going to do it, right? So that's the most frustrating thing in the world to me, is just to activate it. Just try it. Rip the Band-Aid off. What's the worst that can happen? So I think I've had to overcome that a million times in my life to like, do I really belong here? Is this person really better than me? All the times that I failed miserably, it's because I mentally stopped myself from succeeding. I promise you, every single time. I didn't cause the market crash in my brain at all, but the darkness I went into because of it and the backward steps I took further than I should have were all based on my own mental limitations, not anything was happening in the market. Sometimes you got to take 10 steps backwards to go forwards. And I have to realize that as well, right? Like it's not going to always be forward steps. Sometimes you have to go backwards to go forward. So I think, like most people, that's definitely my biggest limiting belief is that I'm not good enough to do something. In most cases, it's not true.
Yeah. Greatest are self-inflicted all day, every day.
Yeah.
Okay. So what would you say then? Because, I actually think it could be many things. So I'm curious what you'll say is, what is one of your superpowers? Like something that you're so good at that you're proud of?
That's good. That's a good question. So I think that I am very, very good at seeing the good or great in other people. I think that's something I'm very good at. Like people can tell me they have an idea of doing this and they're doing that. And I was like, that's amazing. And this is why that's your story. And this is why your story is important. And I think that's where I excel, like seeing the great in other people. Like maybe they can't even see themselves sometimes, but I see it. And that's where my frustrations come in most also, because why aren't you doing this? Like, why aren't you using this? Why aren't you doing this? But I think seeing the good in other people is definitely something that really comes easily to me. And I when I see it, it always seems very clear to me.
I think that's why you have a lot of people standing next to you, Ralph.
Thank you. I hope so.
You are so good at that. What is something on your bucket list?
It's a good question. What is something on my bucket list? So, like I said, I think I'm hyper obsessed with my children at this point in life.
That's an obsession. Yeah. I feel like that's a healthy one.
It's a healthy obsession, yeah. So I think that seeing some things through with them, connecting with them on something we can see through together is definitely, and for both of them, it's something different. For my son, it's a little bit more clear than my daughter at this point, just because she's younger and she's very girly, and it's harder. It's more challenging for me to connect with her than it is with him. But and the other reason why it's challenging for me to connect with her is because she don't care. She's like, I'm not doing this, or I'm not doing that. And she's very comfortable in her own skin, and she's not going to necessarily do things that I want her to do if she doesn't want to do them. So I think the challenging is, how can I connect with them better, and how can we see things through together? I think that's what I think about every single day. I'm always trying to think about what they're thinking. Kobe Bryant is somebody I think about every single day, which is scary enough that somebody I never met in my life, but he's somebody who's resonated with me more than almost anybody that I've ever thought about, right? And what I really connect with him on is his post-career, not his career, but his post-career. And we're the same age. We're born, like, I think, 2 weeks apart. And he was like hyper obsessed with his children and their success. And Michael Jordan told a story about him in his eulogy where he said Kobe would message him crazy hours of the night and ask him crazy questions. And he said to him, hey, at 2 o'clock in the morning, he texted him. He's like, hey, when you were 12 years old playing basketball, what were you thinking? And he's like, what? I don't know what I was thinking. It was like, I was probably thinking about playing baseball. I didn't even like basketball when I was 12 years old. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. But he's like, why are you asking me for this? And he's like, I'm trying to figure out what goes through my daughter's head on the level she is right now playing basketball. And like, that just resonated with me so much. Like, I was just like, yes, that makes so much sense to me. He had become hyper obsessed with women's basketball and excelling women's basketball and making it a thing. And it's just like something completely outside of what he did. And I just think that I so connect with that, not because he said it, but because I feel it. I generally feel it. Like, how do I connect with them to make them great? Like, all the great stuff that maybe other people think I've done. And sometimes I reminisce and think that was good. I still feel like my purpose on this earth was to, one, be a father and get them to be something great, and two, I think I'm here as a conduit to get other people to find their greatness. I really feel that in my soul.
I know that that's accurate, because I have those moments too, where my essence and my being, my purpose is truly a vessel. I know I'm just a vessel for other things. So it's not about me. It's a channel to accelerate, to execute things of the people around me. So I know that feeling that you're talking about. And I love the description that you have of Kobe, because when I think of Kobe, and he'll be talked about every day for eternity by all walks of life, and all over the world. And I think that was something that was running through my head as we're having this conversation in this episode, is legacy. Is like, what's and I think that's the thing, is when it's not about what you've accomplished, and gosh, that man has accomplished more than I think anybody can even, fathom. But it's the legacy that he leaves because of who he is as a person, not because of all these accolades.
1,000%. Yeah. I think what he, I don't take a lot of, probably to a fault, I don't put a lot of value on accomplishing things by myself. Whether it's been awards, or it's been athletic accomplishments, or endurance events, races I've won, and stuff I don't take a lot of value in it. I just kind of always on to the next thing. And I've had people say to me a bunch of times, "Can't you just sit and enjoy for 2 seconds?" And I'm just like, I don't know. I enjoy the process of things, and I enjoy involving other people. But if somebody else is successful, or somebody tells me they were successful in something I did, I hold a lot of value to that. Like that is more valuable to me than almost anything. So I'm not like a saint. I'm being selfish, right? Like, I want to do the things that make me feel good, and it makes me feel good when other people feel good. If that's that's how I'm wired, right? It doesn't make me a saint. It doesn't make me better than anybody else. It's just how I'm wired. And if I'm reacting to the things that make me feel good, and I want to feel good more, that's it.
Well, I'm glad you're wired that way, because but with that, Ralph, if you could give one last piece of advice to anybody who's listening to this podcast right now, what would it be?
Bet on yourself more, right? Like, believe in yourself and bet on yourself more, because there's something unique about all of us, right? There is something unique about all of us. Whether or not you found that or not, I don't know. Or maybe you'll never find it, but you should try. right? You should bet on yourself and continue to try. And I bet on myself every single day. And some days I don't feel like doing it, and some days I don't feel like motivating other people. But I continuously bet on myself, and it works out. It's worked out in the long run, I feel like.
I think so. So how can people find you? How can they follow you?
So my Instagram is probably the easiest place. It's at DiBug. It's DIBUG, and I respond to all my messages there. My website is ralphdibugnara.com. There's a bunch of stuff on there, from the book to my real estate course to videos, free stuff. So ralphdibugnara.com is a good place to kind of go there and get stuff. And I'm accessible. So if this gives you any questions at all, let me know and I will respond.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that. You've got the one-stop shop with your website. I've mentioned your Instagram. You've been amazing to follow. You're very inspiring. I love what you do. I just love the transparency of how you do it. So I appreciate, with knowing all the major things that you have on your plate and the holidays that are approaching, that you took time out of your busy schedule to spend it with me today. Thank you.
Well, this is very well done, and I watched some stuff before I got on, and you do a very good job with this. So thank you for having me, because I appreciate it, because I think it's a great platform.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ralph. Ralph DiBugnara. It was amazing to have him on the show, aka DiBug. Hope you're following him now on Instagram. What I love about Ralph is 3 things: tenacity. 3, 2, 1. It was so amazing to have Ralph DiBugnara on the show, and I wanted to tell you about his book. So I know we talked about it a little bit, but just so you could go get it on Amazon, it's called The Growth Trap, a continuous plan to avoid the traps of life and build a better you. It is a Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestseller, so trust me when I say there is good information for you to learn. 3 of the things that stand out to me the most about Ralph are grit, transparency, and unwavering action. Just the way that he pursues life is that he is always in that comeback zone, whether it was a recession, whether it was things that didn't go right as a teen that he made decisions in, or even in his real estate decisions in his recent years, or conversations that he would have with his kids. You know, he pursues relentlessly the things that he believes in, and that's that extra fortitude, that grit, that persistence in life. And I think that's why he's gotten to where he is and is doing so many amazing things, like bringing the 2nd season of his show to DirecTV. Transparency is so threaded through his life. He's not afraid to say the things that went wrong. He is honest. I think if you follow him, you'll see that. He's not afraid to talk about mistakes or talk about things that didn't go his way, and just unwavering action. You know, I love that he is a person that can make a decision and go, you know, I don't know everything that's going to happen, but we're going to figure it out. You know, you're going to get the right team around you, and together you're going to build. I really enjoyed that he said it's not about people following him, it's about people standing next to him. How amazing is that as a philosophy, if we all thought about how we could build more and more people to stand next to us versus just to be inspired by us. It's for them to live their best life, to go through their journey and get all the outcomes beyond their wildest imagination, and be standing with you and celebrating life with you. That's what it's all about. I really thoroughly enjoyed learning from him, his energy, just an amazing all-around guy. So definitely get his book, follow his work. I hope you were inspired today, and if you were, please share this episode with somebody who needs to hear it. You could make their day. You could change their life with just one decision to share a little bit of something that somebody needs. I know it's made a difference in my life when people share with me, and so I hope that you can pay it forward and do the same. If you haven't already, please do subscribe and follow the Born Unbreakable podcast you can continue to stay inspired with all the future episodes on the show. I'm excited as we move into a new year to think about the ways that I'm going to continue to engage you as my incredible audience. So thank you for continuing to stick with me, to be here, to support me. We're going on this journey of life together. I absolutely believe that you're standing beside me. So thank you. Thank you for that. I also just, as we head into the holidays, and, it's a very reflective time for me. I tend to be a little bit harder on myself and thinking about if I'm accomplishing everything I really want to accomplish in the world. And I'm trying to do a better job of giving myself grace. But I do think that a place that we can get to that makes us feel good is a place of gratitude. So I would absolutely ask you and invite you to answer the question, what are you thankful for? When you think about sitting around a table with the people that you love, friends, family, and maybe even new people that will be sitting around your table this year, sharing a meal, sharing conversation, what does that mean to you? What really are you thankful for? And just lean into that. I loved hearing Ralph talk about his kids and having that be his bucket list item, is really working to accomplish things with them. That's probably one of the best answers that I've ever heard on the show. And this is really a time that you can dig deep and connect with yourself and connect with others in this season, and hopefully that's something that you can carry through even into the new year, is doing a better connection and being thankful for you and your own growth too in the process. So remember that you are your only limit, so take action today. Can't wait to see you on the next episode of the Born Unbreakable podcast.